So choosing a graduate program is obviously incredibly difficult and probably one of the most important decisions you'll make in your academic career as well as your professional career. And so how do you actually choose your graduate program? This is the question I feel like is really never answered, and I haven't had very many conversations about how to do this. So today I'm going to be going over the strategy that really worked well for me in finding a program and professor for my Fulbright, and now the strategy that I'm using for pursuing grad programs today. So the very first thing that is so important before you've done anything is to make a list of essential preferences that you have for where you're going to be, for your program that you're going to be in. So ask yourself these questions. How far am I comfortable being from home? I think this is so important to ask yourself before you've even thought about any specific schools or programs yet, because if you're going to be in a program for up to 6 to 9 years, some people take a very long time with PhD programs. Are you going to be okay if a flight home is going to cost over $1,000? Or if a drive home is going to be 20 plus hours? Is that going to be something that's really going to affect your mental health? So another question you should ask yourself is, are there any specific types of weather that you cannot tolerate? Do you hate the cold? Do you hate the heat for extended periods of time? Personally, I cannot tolerate the cold for long periods of time. I know I would just be miserable in somewhere in the Northeast. So I literally don't even consider those options in the United States. I just can't. I know it will really affect my mental health. So make sure to ask yourself if that is the case for you. If you just can't tolerate the heat, can't tolerate the cold, if it's really going to play a substantial effect on your mental health. Also ask yourself, is a small town more comfortable, or would you be more comfortable in a larger city? So is a small town going to drive you insane over time if you're going to be there for a long period of time, or is a big city going to be really overwhelming for you? Another important question is, where do I draw the line with my budget? This might be the most important question that you have to ask yourself, especially if it is a very long program or if there are very substantial differences in costs for universities or programs. Ask yourself what you're going to be okay with paying off or suffering from while you're in the grad program itself. So once you've asked yourself these very important questions, this is when it is okay to start looking at the actual rankings and start really getting a grasp on specific schools, regions, and programs that you might want to look into further. Because now at this point, you probably have some sort of vision of a program in your head of what's going to be really great. So I recommend going to the US News Rankings report. This is definitely the most robust assessment for academic programs in the world of academia. And if you look at the actual methodology for how the US News report comes up with these rankings, it's actually really objective and actually a great way to kind of see where graduation rates, retention rates, and general success of students is for different universities. But definitely take this report with a grain of salt, because there definitely isn't that much variation within each grouping of 10. So 1 through 10, 11 through 20, 21 through 30, there really isn't that much difference between them in academic success. And also, don't let this sway you too much in picking a program, because with an assessment like this, it's definitely very objective and looks at the whole university overall. But for a graduate program, you're usually looking at very specific types of fields. So just because a school is the best in the country doesn't mean that the Department of Biology is the best in the country. It doesn't mean that the best marine ecology professors aren't at this university. So take it all with a grain of salt for sure. So as you start actually looking through the rankings, take note of universities and programs that fit within your preferences for location, size, and the actual cost of the program itself. So I would then start putting some of those programs that you took note of into a spreadsheet and personally rank them yourself based on your own personal preferences. So once you've come up with a substantial list of universities and programs that you're happy with, this is when you have to do some of the hard work of actually researching each of these programs to really figure out which one is going to be best for you. And I definitely can't stress this enough, how important it is to really dive into each program, because you really don't know which one is going to fit you best personally until you've done the research yourself. So this is definitely very relevant to people that are pursuing a more research-focused program, although this definitely has applications to other types of programs. But this is definitely the most important part of searching for a program that's going to work for you, because the professor, the supervisor, is going to have a massive role on your experience at a specific university. So it's so important to make sure that you have someone that you're going to work well with and that really relates to the type of work that you want to do. So the process that I go through to find a professor that is going to align with my interests is, for every single school I do this, I go to the department that I am most interested in studying. So for me, that's the Department of Biology for each school or something related to that. And if I can search by something more specific like marine ecology, marine biology, community ecology, then I'll search by those terms and I won't look at the other professors, but I will go through every single professor. I'll go through every single professor and I will look at their bio. And if that is interesting to me, I'll go to their websites. I look at their grad students. I look at their whole website. And if it's still really intriguing to me, I start looking at their most recent publications. And this starts to give me a really holistic picture of what this professor is all about, what the vibe of his whole lab is, and the types of projects and the types of research that they really enjoy doing. So if I really like what the type of research the professor does or what the lab has to offer and kind of the whole feel of the lab, then I'll put that professor's name in a different spreadsheet and I'll put a little bit of information related to that professor, of the school that they're at, of the location of the school, and a little bit more about the lab and research. So I start keeping track of all of these professors. And I know this sounds really excessive, but in order to find a perfect fit for your graduate program and a professor that's really going to work well for you, it's definitely not easy. It's going to take a lot of professors to really figure out who's going to work best for you. And it's also going to be really important to the professor that you put in this kind of work, because a professor is going to want to know that it was very intentional, you reaching out to them, and it wasn't just, they just happened to fit kind of with your research interest and you just want to go to a really prestigious school. So anyway, as you're going through and have a growing list of professors, try to actually rank them and I actually gave them a score for how well I liked their lab and how much they actually related to my own research interests. And this actually worked really well in coming up with some sort of ranking system for really great professors that I had a lot to talk about with. So at this point, you should probably have a better idea, at least, of which programs, which professors are going to be best for you. So reaching out to the professor. This is really important to also understand if you're going to be a good fit for the lab, and to have a bit of conversation to really understand if they're going to be a good fit for you. This is going to be a person that mentors you and is basically your boss for 2 to 5+ years. So you definitely want to make sure that you get along with them and you can build off of each other's work. So before you reach out to a professor, make sure you go to their website, and there's usually a spot for interested students or join us or whatever. And they'll usually have some sort of outline or guideline for interested students, graduate students to work with them. And they'll outline their preference for what you should reach out to them with. So They'll say if they want a CV, a resume, transcript, graduation, whatever. Make sure that you have looked to see if they have that, because you don't want to annoy them right off the bat with the first email trying to work with them and you don't have what they had asked for. It's going to show that you have not done any research on them. So before you've reached out to them, also, it's a really good idea to at least look at the abstracts for their most recent publications or selected publications, because this is going to give you a really good idea of the type of work that they want you to be familiar with and the type of work that they do, which should be of interest to you if you're going to work with them. So once you've actually reached out to a professor, I would ask to do some sort of virtual coffee or informal interview to figure out and ask some questions about what they do for a living. Now, professors are incredibly busy people, and you might not get a response for 1 week to a month, but be persistent and keep emailing. Don't be annoying with how many times you email. I would email maybe once a week at max. Maybe once every 2 weeks. Just keep following up with them, because they will eventually see that you are determined and this is a really intentional connection. Show that you are really intentional about working with them. That's going to be really important in gaining some sort of trust and support from a professor. So my other recommendations for a graduate program and choosing one, and what's really going to help you, is to do as much as you can to understand what the experience is going to be like. And this is really difficult as we're not really able to visit very many institutions right now. But there are some things that you can do, and having a virtual coffee with a professor is a really great idea to get a good feel for what the program's like, what the professor and the lab is like. But you can also reach out to different people. You could reach out to graduate students at that university. They're usually quite approachable to students that are interested in working with them or working at the university with them, and talk to even students at the university. And you can also always call their graduate student office to get a good grasp on what the actual program is like. I've done this for a few different schools, and the counselors are usually super helpful and super informative to give you a really good grasp on what to expect if you were a student at the university. So there are many things that go into choosing a graduate program, and really at the end of the day, it comes down to what you value most. Take time to make this decision, because it can be a monumental one. Graduate school is where you find a lot of connections, and you could even be working in this place that you choose for a very long time. And also, you could be spending up to 5+ years there during the actual program. So make sure that you take time to ask yourself, honestly, what is important to you in the location that you're going to be at. Don't let the rankings sway you too much in what that decision is going to be. Clout is great, but so is your mental health and the quality of your experience. Clout doesn't mean everything. Prestige does not mean everything. So with all of that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I really wish you the best of luck in choosing your graduate program. Let me know in the comments where you're at in the application process, where you're applying, and I'll see you next week. Thank you for watching.